Hello, friends. I hope it is audible. Yeah. In the previous class, we have discussed about introduction to social science research, and we also discussed about the types of social research. Today, we'll be discussing about lesson number 3, steps in social science research. The steps which we are going to discuss, my dear friends, the same steps will also be used at the PG level for submitting our project reports, even for PhD, or even if any person is going to conduct any research, my dear friends, we are going to follow the same steps, my dear friends. So, concentrate on this lesson. For doing any research, my dear friends, we are going to have a procedure, a methodology, some steps which we need to follow, my dear friends. If you see in page number 24, we discuss about scientific methods in social science research. So before going into the social science research, let us discuss what is science. If you want to define any subject as a science, my dear friends, our duty is to do experimentation, verification, and that knowledge needs to have validity and reliability. And if we are going to fulfill these four conditions like experimentation, verification, validity, and reliability, my dear friends, at the time we call that subject as a science. Science is not merely for the collection of facts or defining the concepts or for use for designing certain ideas or about events, my dear friends. But we also do systematic investigation into the nature so that we can define the facts, we can define the concepts, everything, my dear friends. So science is the method of investigating into the nature to know about the nature. So that we are going to have reliable knowledge or information. And based on this knowledge, my dear friends, based on this reliable knowledge, we can formulate the theories or we can understand the society and so on. So let us discuss about the steps which are involved in this. There are several methods in sociology already we have discussed in the previous class, like survey research, observation, content analysis, ethnography, and so on, my dear friends. So when we are going to do scientific method, my dear friends, it consists of five steps. First one is make observations. So first step is that we need to make observation. Like, have you ever gone to the temple? If you are a Hindu, when you have gone to the temple, my dear friends, you must have seen the people putting on like this. If a person is going to keep like this, the priest is going to put on the water thrice and is also going to chant three spells. Have you observed that? If he's a priest, Orthodox priest, then he's going to chant three spells. They are like Vidya, Arogyam, Aishwaryam. And if you're not going to keep the finger like this, and if you're not going to keep like this, if you keep like this, he's going to keep the holy water only once and is not even going to spell the words like. He's not going to even utter the words. So, first thing is that our duty is to observe the things. So, why the person is doing like this and why a Brahmin is going to chant the spells also. So, once you have made the observations, so based on these observations, our duty is to formulate a hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing but a tentative statement or an assumption made by the researcher, assuming that there is some sort of relation between two or more variables. Hello? Hello? Okay. There is some sort of relation between two or more variables, my dear friends. For example, say that if a person is going to keep like this, he's going to chant three spells saying that, three words saying that he is educated, he will be healthy, and he will also be wealthy. So I'm going to formulate a hypothesis saying that a person who is going to keep like this in front of the God, that means he's going to be healthy, wealthy, and so formulating any hypothesis does not mean that the hypothesis is right, my dear friends. Our duty is to do the experiment. That means gather the information from the people, then do the keep the information for experimentation, and based on the results, we can either accept our hypothesis or else reject our hypothesis. It is only a tentative statement or the assumption made by the researcher. Remember that. So first one is our duty is to observe the people, and based on our observations, we are going to formulate the hypothesis. The third step, my dear friends, is to design and perform experiments. So based on our hypothesis, we are going to have a research design. There are three major types of research designs, my dear friends. The first one is explorative research design. That means if no person has touched the research till now, no one has done the research, that means there will not be any written literature available. Or else if we go and talk about Lambada culture, like there is no lipi for them, that means there is no written culture and people does not have much information about that. So when there is no available information or little available information, if you want to know the unknown, at the time you go for explorative research design, my dear friends. You're going for explorative research design. Then you have information about the society or about the event or the phenomena. At that time, if you want to know about what happened, how it happened, where it happened, if you want to get the answers for these kind of questions, how, what, where, all these type of questions, at the time you go for descriptive research design. And if you want to know the cause and effect relationship between the variables, at the time you go for explanatory research design. So the third step is that we are going to talk about a research design, and we are also going to perform the experiments, my dear friends. And the fourth step is that accept or modify the hypothesis as per the requirement. And the last one is we are going to develop a law or a theory based on our research findings, my dear friends. So in terms of scientific methods, these are the five steps which are involved, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about the steps which are involved in social science research. We are going to have 8 types of steps, my dear friends, according to Heslin, which is there in page number 25. Page number 25. The first step is selecting a topic. The first one is selecting a topic of your choice, because there are plenty of issues across the society, across the world, my dear friends. So every person may not be interested in each and every topic. So our duty is to select a topic of our choice. So selecting the topic depends on multiple factors. The first one is if you are doing research for your academic purpose. So most of you, including when I was a student, like even me, I have selected topic which can be easily completed. There will not be any critical or any problem for me, my dear friends. So if it is for academic purpose, it is entirely different. If you're going to depend on the funding agency, like UGC provides scholarship for the students, ICSSR, Indian Council for Social Science Research, they also give that, the fellowships. Then we also have this health department, which also gives scholarship for the social science students to do research on health related aspects, my dear friends. ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Science Research. ICMR also provides scholarship for sociology students who have completed their masters and want to pursue their PhD in sociology. So we have plenty of funding agencies. So sometimes the funding agencies may be open for any topic, whereas sometimes they may be specific, saying that you have to do the research on specific area. At that time, you will be forced to select the topic only from the given area, my dear friends. So it depends on the choice, it depends on the time, it depends on the funding agency or the research agency which is going to provide us the project, and so on, my dear friends. But the first step which is involved is selecting the topic, my dear friends. Once you have selected the topic, the next step is defining the problem. Our duty is to define the problem. What is the problem like? What is the intensity of the problem? What is the need for us to study about the problem? Everything we need to mention. For example, is begging a problem, guys? For most of the people, begging is not a problem, because we find beggars in our common life, day to day life. If we go to any religious places, we'll find beggars nearby the religious places. We go on the streets, you'll find beggars on the street corners, and so on. And almost all the religions say that if you're going to give alms to the people, if you're going to give some money to the beggar, all your sins will be washed off. So it is also linked with the religion, my dear friends. But for most of the people, begging is not a problem. But government is saying that don't provide money to the beggars. Do you know why? If you have watched this movie, Slum Dog Millionaire, In that, you must have found that some of the people were made handicapped. They have chopped their hands or legs, or else they have put on the acid on the body, or else they have made them blind or dumb, and they are forcing them into begging, my dear friends. Last 5 6 months back in Hyderabad, there was a organized begging gang which was caught by the police. A person from other state came here and he started bringing the people from the rural areas and forcing them to enter into begging, and they also started giving them targets like per day you have to earn this much money and give it to us. These kind of situations are also existing in Hyderabad, my dear friends. Forget about Mumbai, forget about Delhi. If they are coming on their own, it is not a problem. But if they are forced to enter into begging, then it becomes a problem, my dear friends. So our duty is to define the problem, how it is a problem, and what are the causes and consequences of problem. All these things we are going to mention in the second step. Then third one is we are going for a review of literature. That means already some people must have done the study and they have published their findings in the form of article in a journal, or they must have published a book, or else even the government must have done the study and they must have come up with government guesty, government records, and so on, my dear friends. So we are going to read all this literature part. So there must be a question from your side, sir. I want to do research. Why I have to read somebody's research? It provides four types of insights to us, my dear friends. If you're going to have the review of literature, you're going to have four types of benefits. The first benefit is that you may have some thought process. Whether your thoughts are sufficient to do the research or not, you can compare your thought process with already people who have done the research, my dear friends. Let me add give one example here. Almost 10, 11 years back, in the northern part of India, there were floods. And most of the people have been washed off with the floods and they were put to death. And the next day, in the newspaper, there were statistics saying that these many adult male, these many adult female, these many girl child and boy child have been put to death just because of floods. And it was routine statistics even in the newspaper, even in the television, and so on. But a professor from the university, she came forward and she wanted to study the death rate from the gender perspective. So everyone was shocked. Yeah, there were floods and the girls and boys have been washed off with the floods and they are put to death. And this lady is saying that this professor is saying that she want to study the death rate from the gender perspective. Before reading that article, even I did not have the information. How come the death rate is linked with the gender perspective? In her article, she has narrated that the boys are allowed to go for swimming and they are allowed to climb the trees, whereas the girls are deprived. They are never encouraged to go for swimming, neither encouraged to climb the trees. If they do that, they are going to they punish them. So obviously, when there were floods, some of the people who know how to swim, how to climb the trees, they protected themselves. Whereas the girls, they don't know the art or the skill of swimming, neither climbing the tree. That's the reason why they have been washed off with the floods and they have been put to death. That's the reason why the female death rate is very, very higher compared with the male death rate, my dear friends. So if you're going to read some articles, then you can compare your ideas with that of the others' ideas. If they are missing anything, then you can add that missing element and do the research. And if you don't have the complete information, then that research findings or their articles or their books are going to give the information for us, my dear friends. So based on this, you can decide whether you have to go for explorative, descriptive, or explanatory research design. It will help you in deciding what kind of research design it must be there and what kind of tools you are supposed to employ in gathering the information. First benefit. Second benefit is that it will tell you how much money is required, how much time is required, how much human resources is required for conducting the study. Okay. Second benefit is how much time is required, how much money is required, how much human resource is required in order to gather the information. Second benefit. Third benefit, it will also tell us about the prospective problems which we may arise. What kind of problems we may arise in the field. We may also get that kind of information, my dear friends. Third benefit for doing the review of literature. Fourth one, it will help us to organize our research properly. So these are the four types of benefits which we are going to have if we go for a review of literature. So the first one is, the first step is selecting the topic. Second one is defining the problem. The third one is review of literature. Then the fourth step is formulating a hypothesis. Here we are going to formulate a hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing but a tentative statement or an assumption made by the researcher, assuming that there is some sort of relation, remember. Then the fifth one is choosing a research method. That means we have multiple methods, my dear friends, for gathering the data or the tools of data collection, like observation, case study, interview schedule, questionnaire method, survey method, case study. Nowadays, we also have participatory rural appraisal, participatory and learning appraisal, and so on. There are plenty of tools. So our duty is to select a suitable method for our study. And after that, the next step will be collecting the data. We go to the people and we are going to gather the information from the people. And once we get the information, our duty is to do the analysis of the data. And then we are going to have the findings, suggestions, and conclusions. And whatever the research is there, my dear friends, it must not go vain. For that reason, we are going to present our research findings in the form of article or in the form of a book or in any seminar or conferences, my dear friends, so that the appropriate government or the agencies can use our information in formulating the policies or modifying the policies and so on. So these are the steps involved in terms of social science research, my dear friends. So whenever you talk about formulating a research problem, remember, whenever we talk about formulating a research problem, it is important to select a topic for doing the research, and it may be complex. So when we are going to think, then there are two types of thinking perspectives, my dear friends. One is rational thinking perspective, and the other one is creative thinking perspective. There are two types of thinking, my dear friends. One is rational thinking perspective, and the other one is creative thinking perspective. According to rational thinkers, they select the topic, uh, like lifestyles which are associated with their livelihood outcomes or their future aspirations, whereas creative thinkers normally break away from the past titles. They do not depend on the existing reports or thesis. They have the curiosity to know something which is new and no one has touched the area or no much work done on that social phenomena. So creative thinkers will go for the new topics, whereas rational thinkers will go with the routine aspects, my dear friends. Based on this, my dear friends, they are going to formulate the uh, problem. Once you have formulated the problem, my dear friends, the next step is to go for review of literature and then design the concept, gather the information, and then publish it, my dear friends. When we go for data, my dear friends, there are two types of data. One is primary data and the other one is secondary data. The data which is gathered by the researcher on his own from the people, that we call it as primary data. If somebody has already done the research and published the research in the form of books, journals, maybe in the newspaper, government gazette, and so on, this kind of data, we call it as secondary data, my dear friends. So when we are going to draft a report, we need to keep certain things into our mind, or else the first one is to assess the impact of an initiative. For example, the government of India has launched this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or scheme. It says that it's going to provide minimum 100 days. It is going to provide minimum 100 days employment for the unskilled or semi-skilled people who are residing in the rural areas. So the government thought that by providing 100 days employment, we can upgrade their social and economical condition. We can take care of the people. So I want to assess the impact of this scheme on the livelihood of the people. So first purpose, When you are going to present a report, my dear friends, we need to present these things to assess the impact of an initiative. Second one, we are going to present a document about social process or change, how the society is being changed, okay, or how the society is being processed. Everything we are going to present on that. The third one is we need to answer the questions raised in the research. So at the time of hypothesis, we are going to formulate the hypothesis, also put on certain questions which we are going to investigate. So we also try to answer these questions, my dear friends. The fourth one is we try to make scientific analysis so that we can arrive at causal factors. We can understand the cause and effect factors, my dear friends. And the last one is our duty is to present the facts through our research findings. So these are the five things which need to be presented in our research report, my dear friends. And when we are going to draft a report, my dear friends, it has to elaborate on clarifying the terms of reference, research objectives, research design, and the methodology the researcher which has adopted, description of the field site where you are doing the research, what is the condition of the research, like their social conditions, economical conditions, their culture, their lifestyle, so on, my dear friends. Our duty is also to explain about that, because there is huge variation between the people who reside in the tribal areas, who reside in the rural areas, and even in the urban areas and towns, my dear friends. So it varies. So our duty is to describe about the field site where we are going to conduct our research. The next step is, once you get the data, you're going to analyze the data, and then you're going to give the important findings and discussions. You're also going to talk about the instruments which we have used for data collection, saying that these are the appropriate tools we have to support uh, our tools. Like, these are the things which we need to keep in mind when we are going to elaborate or write a research report, my dear friends. And we also have certain formats which need to be included in the sections, my dear friends, when you're going to draft a research report. The first page, after your title page, we are going to write about a certificate of declaration, saying that this is my original work. I did not copy this research from any other person. So we are going to declare, saying that this is my genuine or real or original work. In the second page, my dear friends, you are going to write about the introduction about the topic. In that, you write about the background of the research study, why you have chosen the topic, what are the objectives of the study, what are the research questions, what kind of methodology you're going to use for data collection. All these things you're going to provide that in the introduction. And in the third, like, you're going to write about the review of literature. That means whatever the other people's research is there, that you're going to put it on in this review of literature. Then the next one is you're going to present the data in the form of findings. Next one, discussions, and then conclusion, reference, followed by annexure. In the annexure, you're going to put on your questionnaire or interview schedule. Okay, if you want, you can add your samples. If you want, you can add some pictures so that you can have better understanding on the presentation, my dear friends. And these are the things which we need to keep in mind, or these are the things which are included in our research, my dear friends. Guys, this lesson is very important in terms of steps in social science research. So be thorough with that. That will come damn sure in your final examination. Now, if you have any doubts, you can ask me, or else we'll go to the next lesson. If you have any doubts, you can ask, or else we'll go to the next lesson, guys. Okay. We'll go for hypothesis, my dear friends. Already I said that hypothesis is nothing but a tentative statement made by the researcher. It is simply an assumption. What is the need for us to have this hypothesis? Why it is important in our research? First one is that because if we take any topic, my dear friends, the society is vast. There are plenty of issues, my dear friends. So we need to know what are our boundaries, what are the limitations, what kind of data is required for our study. So in order to have a focus, in order to limit our study, this hypothesis is going to help us, my dear friends. It is going to help us to know our area, what kind of information is required, to what extent I have to go, what are my limitations, what are boundaries. This is going to guide us in our research, my dear friends. This is going to guide us in terms of doing our research. Let us discuss about the characteristics of hypothesis. The first one, when you're going to define the hypothesis, when you're going to draft a hypothesis, remember that the hypothesis should be clear and precise. It should clearly define a concept. Okay. And when you're going to give it, it must be commonly acceptable and it should be communicable, my dear friends. It must be used in a simple language which can be read and understood by each and every person, my dear friends. So, first one, it should be clear and precise. Hypothesis should be capable of being tested. So, whenever we are going to formulate a hypothesis, we have to make sure that that must be experimentable and that must be testable. For example, if I say God writes our fate, can I test that hypothesis, my dear friends? No. That means I have to simply commit suicide, go to the God and get the information. That is what Imal Durkheim has said. So, whenever you formulate a hypothesis, remember that we have to make in such a way that the variables can be put for experimentation. Um, the next one is it should be limited in scope and must be specific. It should be formulated for a particular and specific problem only. You cannot make generalizations. It must not be very generalized. It must be very, very specific so that we can understand what is the relation between the variables. It may be between the dependent or independent variables or anything, my dear friends. It should be very, very specific. I can say that if parents are properly socializing the children or educating the children will be good enough to the parents when they grow older. If the teacher is good enough, then the students will attend the classes. It must be very, very specific. Remember that. And the next one is it should be easily understandable. It should be relevant to the available techniques. So we are going to have certain techniques, my dear friends, for conducting the test. So whatever the available tests are there, that can be used for our hypothesis. So we need to build our hypothesis in such a way, my dear friends. And it should be related to a body of theory. So already there are certain theories, my dear friends, and we must be able to use that with the existing theories so that we can test our hypothesis also. Then go for the types of hypothesis. In your book, page number 36, they have mentioned only about two types of hypothesis. One is null hypothesis and the other one is alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis is nothing but there is no relation between the variables. There is no relation between the variables, then we call it as null hypothesis, my dear friends. But if there is any relation between between the variables, because it is not null hypothesis, we are going to call it as alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis, my dear friends. In the alternative hypothesis, my dear friends, we are saying that there is some sort of relation between the variables. But in general, my dear friends, we can classify the hypothesis into 6 types. We can classify the hypothesis into 6 types, my dear friends. The first one is working hypothesis. If the researcher is not going to have any information or has no information at the time, he will not have any information means he will not have even the variables. So at the time, how can a person prepare the hypothesis? At the time, my dear friends, the researcher is going for working hypothesis. So when he goes to the field, when he's going to have the information, at the time he is going to formulate the hypothesis, or at the end of the study, the researcher can formulate the hypothesis. So while working, while getting the information, he is going to formulate the hypothesis. That's the reason why we call it as working hypothesis, my dear friends. The beauty of working hypothesis is that the researcher can change the hypothesis n number of times as per his requirement, my dear friends, or as per his understanding on a specific topic. So first one, when we go for explorative research design, at the time we go for working hypothesis. Remember that. For the explorative research design, we go for working hypothesis. Even in the working hypothesis, we can go for it can be null hypothesis, or else there may be relation between the variables, or there may not be relation between the variables also, my dear friends. Remember. The next one is scientific hypothesis. If you are going to formulate the hypothesis based on scientific information, based on scientific data, or based on empirical data, or based on theoretical data, at the time we call it as scientific hypothesis. Then the third one is alternative hypothesis. Already we discussed that. Fourth one is null hypothesis. It says that there is no relation between the variables. Then the fifth one is statistical hypothesis. If you are going to use number or percentage, then for formulating the hypothesis, then we call it as statistical hypothesis. Then the last one is research hypothesis. Research hypothesis. There is something right, but the researcher wants to prove that it is wrong. The researcher wants to prove that it is wrong. At the time, if he is going to formulate the hypothesis, then we call it as research hypothesis. For example, for example, think the Muslim population is increasing because the Muslims are giving birth to more children compared than the other religious group. But the researcher wants to prove that their population is not increasing on par with the Hindu population. So he wants to prove that the assumption is wrong. At the time he goes for research hypothesis. So there are 6 types of hypothesis, my dear friends. First one is working hypothesis, scientific hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, null hypothesis, then research hypothesis, and statistical hypothesis. Then go for the functions of hypothesis. There are 4 major functions of hypothesis. The first one is it enhances the objectivity and the purpose of the research work, because it is going to guide us. It is going to guide us what kind of data is required, what are our boundaries, everything. That's the reason it enhances the objectivity and the purpose of research work, my dear friends. The next one is it guides the researcher on specific scope of the research problem to be investigated. It also increases the researcher's focus and helps the researcher in prioritizing the data collection. And the last one is it enables the researcher to specifically conclude what is true and what is not. These are the 4 functions of hypothesis, my dear friends. Now, how can we derive the hypothesis? Do we have any sources which gives the inputs for us? Let us discuss on them. The first one is the cultural values of society. The cultural values of society will also provide us the insights so that we can formulate the hypothesis. For example, if we see the people who are there in the rural areas, they are more attached to the families compared with the people who are there in the urban or metropolitan cities. Social mobility is more among the people who reside in the urban areas than the people in the rural areas. So you can see that because traditional societies, they give importance to the parents, to the nature, everything. That's the reason why social mobility is less among the rural people than the urban people, my dear friends. Whereas in the urban societies, mobility is more. People give more importance for individualism. They give much importance for entertainment, enjoyment, and so on, my dear friends. So cultural values can also provide us the inputs for formulating the hypothesis. If we see in the rural areas, my dear friends, divorce is very less compared to the people who are there in the modern societies. In the modern societies, taking divorce has become quite common. Going for second marriage, widow marriages are acceptable in the modern societies or in the urban centers than in the traditional or rural societies, my dear friends. So cultural values provide us. The second one is past research. Some people have done the research in the past, and based on their findings, my dear friends, we can also formulate the hypotheses. Remember that. So past research will give understanding on the present scenario, and based on that we can. The third one is folk wisdom. The researcher gets the ideas of hypothesis from commonly held belief system, saying that caste affects individuals' behavior. They also like we also have a statement saying that genius lead unhappy married life. Why? Because they are more attached to the job. They spend a lot of time doing research, everything. That is one of the reason that their family relations may be affected, and they may not lead a happy married life. They may be having a successful professional life, but in terms of marital life, they may not be happy. The young illiterate married girls are more exploited in the joint families. So the folk wisdom, whatever the statements which are there, that can also help us in formulating our hypothesis. Then the next one is when you're going to interact with the people. At the time, you may have certain ideas. The discussions, the conversations also reflect on the life of the people. So this can also provide us the insights into the topic. The next one is personal experiences, and the last one is intuitions. Is nothing but a feeling saying that this phenomena is related with so and so thing or something like. So these are the things which are going to help us in formulating the hypothesis, my dear friends. Then go for steps in hypothesis testing. The first thing what we are supposed to do is state the hypothesis properly. This is the starting point. This is the starting point where we can decide whether the statement of the hypothesis is likely to be true or not. It is a common sense to state the hypothesis either in a null or alternative form. So the first thing is state the hypothesis, guys. Second one is set the criteria for the decision. To set the criteria for a decision, we have to state the level of significance for a test. uh, like for example, um, it is just like the judiciary use criteria for judiciary use in the criminal trials. So whether we go for first what kind of methods we are going to use for investigating the criminal, like, and so on. So what kind of criteria you're going to use, that we are going to mention here. And based on the likelihood of selecting a sample from a population, that means if you want to test your hypothesis, you have to gather the information from the people. So from whom you are going to gather the information, that means you are going to select the sample from the population, my dear friends, total population. And then the likelihood or level of significance is typically set at 5 percentage in the social science studies. When the probability of obtaining a sample mean is less than 5%, if the null hypothesis were true. If this is less than 5%, then the null hypothesis is said to be true. And if the percentage is more than 5%, my dear friends, at the time the null hypothesis is rejected, that means there is some sort of relation between the variables, my dear friends. The next one is then we are going to compute the test statistics. For example, we want to measure a sample means equal to 4 hours per week that children watch television. To make a decision, we need to evaluate how likely this sample outcome is. If the population mean stated by the null hypothesis 3 hours per week is true, we use a test statistic to determine this likelihood, my dear friends. So we are going to see a sample mean, a population mean stated in the null hypothesis. And based on this, we are going to make a decision, my dear friends. We are going to make a decision either accepting or rejecting the hypothesis. If it is less than 5%, then the null hypothesis is true. If it is more than 5%, then it is the null hypothesis is rejected. So here we are going to have two types of error, type 1 error and type 2 error, my dear friends. Type 1 error and type 2 error. In type 1 error, it is nothing but the rejection of a true null hypothesis. It is the rejection of a true null hypothesis. It is also known as false positive findings or conclusion. While a type 2 error is a failure to reject a false null hypothesis. We also call it as false negative findings or conclusion. Type 1 errors refer to one or two kinds of errors of interference that could be made during statistical hypothesis testing, my dear friends. Type 1 error occurs when the null hypothesis, that is, there is no effect or association, is rejected when it is actually true, my dear friends. Type 2 error occurs during hypothesis testing also, my dear friends. uh, there are one or two errors that could be made during hypothesis testing. So if you are going to if you are going to reject a true null hypothesis, it is type 1 error, and if you are going to fail to reject it, then we call it as type 2 error. In this lesson, my dear friends, they'll be asking define hypothesis and explain the types of hypothesis in detail. So read this. This is also very important lesson, my dear friends, or else they may also ask about the sources of formulating the hypothesis. Guys, if you have any doubts, you are free to ask, or else we'll go for the next lesson. Hypothesis is nothing but a tentative statement which is going to guide our research, which is going to increase the precision. It is going to increase the objectivity. It saves our time because we are going to be specific. And there are six types of hypothesis already we have discussed. Let us go for the next lesson, the research design. In that, we go for explorative research design. When we are not going to have any information or has little information about the topic, at the time we go for explorative research design, my dear friends. Social research has discussed that it is a scientific and systematic process of investigating into a social phenomena or a social problem or for understanding the social issues, my dear friends. And the outcomes of the research is going to help the policymakers, the politicians, or the scientists in making or designing the policies for the welfare of the people, my dear friends. The main aim of the research design, the main aim is to have an investigation, systematic investigation into the problem. It begins with the research design, which is designed by the researcher. It is the first step in the research process, and it is also said to be a precondition for generating scientific information. A research design is a complete plan about the activities which we are going to take up in the process of our research investigation. It is just like a blueprint so that we can have an understanding on the social problem. So it is a comprehensive plan. Remember that having a right research design provides a research idea for completing the research work and for completing or drafting the research report, my dear friends. Design describes the methods and the procedures to be used for gathering the information and analyzing the data on a specific research problem. According to Kerlinger, research design is the plan, the structure, and the strategy of investigation conceived so as to obtain answers to research questions and to control variance. According to Sagaran, a research design is a setup to decide on among other issues, how to collect further data, analyze and interpret them, and finally, to provide the answers to the problems. So, Sekaran has identified 6 elements of research design, my dear friends. You can find this in page number 44, last paragraphs. First one is the purpose of the study. What is the need for? What made you to select the topic? We are going to write about the purpose of the study in this. Based on the purpose of the study, you are going to select your research design, my dear friends. The second one is type of investigation, whether it's descriptive, explorative, explanatory, or something like. Our duty is to explain what is the purpose of the study, whether you want to do the study only for the understanding purpose or to address the issues, and how you're going to investigate the problem like, then to what extent the researcher interference is there in the study, then where exactly we are going to study, that is nothing but the study settings, and what are the units which we have taken for analysis, nothing but the variables, and what is the time taken for the study, my dear friends. So according to Sekaran, he has taken up or listed these 6 elements which we are going to take into account when we are going to select a research design, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about the types of research design. There are two perspectives, my dear friends, in terms of research design perspective: qualitative as well as quantitative research design perspective. Let us discuss about qualitative research design perspective. The qualitative research design perspective is exploratory in nature, and it tries to explore the research problems. It tries to seek the answers to the questions like what happened, how it happened, all these things, my dear friends. To know the unknown, to have a better understanding, we go for qualitative studies, my dear friends. A qualitative research design is used to explore the meaning and the understanding of complex social environment like nature of people's experiences, the everyday life, and so on, my dear friends. And when we talk about qualitative research design, my dear friends, it is 5 types. There are 5 qualitative methods. The first one is ethnography. Ethnography. This research is useful in collecting first-hand information about the people's day-to-day life in their natural settings. If you want to know about the people, about the day-to-day life in their natural settings, then we call it as ethnographic studies, my dear friends. In this, my dear friends, the researcher goes to the people and get first-hand information by using participant observation. Observation is of 2 types. Observation means to see something which a purpose, we call it as observation. It is one of the best tool. Remember, it is one of the best tool for qualitative studies. This is also the technique which is used in natural sciences. I'll add the more information onto this. All of you have studied about Newton's laws. One fine day, Newton sat beneath an apple tree and he saw the apple falling to the ground. He observed that apple has fell to the ground. Then he took 2 stones and he released towards the earth, and both of them fell to the ground. He thought that because I'm releasing towards the earth, that may be the reason. So he went onto the top of the building from where he released it. Even the stones fell to the ground. Then he released it towards the sky, and again it fell back to the ground. So, based on his observation, he saw something with a purpose. Why these are falling, whether it's only apple falls or even the other fruits fall or the stones fall. So, he has observed something with a purpose. So, seeing something with a purpose, we call it as observation. So, if you want to observe the people, their day to day life, then we call it as observation. We call it as ethnography. In ethnography, we go for participant observation. So there are 2 types of observation, guys. One is participant observation, and the other one is non-participant observation. In the participant observation, the researcher goes and mingles with the people. He resides with them, and he will try to get the information. When he goes there, he tells why he came, what is the purpose of his visiting the village. Then he stays with them as they reside, and then he tries to get the insights about their life, death, their belief system, everything. In the non participant observation, the researcher will be outside the group. He will not take active part. Even he will not expose that he is studying the people or is observing the people, my dear friends. So participant observation is the best tool for qualitative studies. So first one is ethnographic studies. The second one is narrative. In this, the experiences of the individuals uh, who form part of the respondents of the research, a researcher, are recorded systematically and they are analyzed, my dear friends. And they are analyzed. We are going to gather the experiences of the people and we are going to analyze it in the form of life stories of the individuals, so that based on the life stories we are going to draw sociologically meaningful inferences so that it helps us to understand the influence of social structure and so on, my dear friends. Let me add one thing, one example here. A sociologist has gone to Bangladesh to do a study on a brothel house where thousands and thousands of girls are there. When he went there, when he said that I'm a sociologist, I came here to do the study, none of the girls came forward. Later on, one lady came forward and she asked the person, "Are you a customer or why you came here?" Then the boy said that I'm a sociologist from America. I came here to study about the conditions of the people. And the lady has narrated the story saying that I am born in a family where my papa is very poor, we are very poor, and we are two girls, and my elder sister is grown up, and my parents wants to perform the marriage, but they are very, very poor that they could not perform either of them. So they thought that instead of both the ladies suffering, they thought that let one suffer and at least let one be happy. So they sold me to a person who said that they are going to use me as a maid or a servant. Later on, that fellow, after purchasing me, he sold me to a brothel house. And here, the life is horrible. She has narrated that. If you want, you'll find that documentary in the Discovery Channel, my dear friends. So here we are going to record the experiences of the people. So they are going to narrate their life stories, like we call it as narratives. Even these we call it as qualitative studies. The third one is phenomenology. This method is about describing an event. It is nothing but about a phenomena. It is going to describe about a phenomena, nothing but an event, activity, or anything, my dear friends. So this can be through interviews, reading documents, watching videos, or visiting the places or events. Even this way also, my dear friends, we can have an understanding on the events which have took place or the activities. Based on our understanding, my dear friends, we can also make decisions about our life, career, and so on. The next one is grounded theory. In this, the researcher looks to provide an explanation or theory behind the events or social phenomena. So they are going to tell about or provide an explanation or a theory behind the events or social phenomena. For example, for example, we can see that Article 370 and 35A has been repealed. Sorry, has been removed from the Indian Constitution. Jammu and Kashmir used to have special provisions. And at the time, you can see that every day there used to be encounters. You can see stone pelting and so on. And few districts, not across the state, but few districts were fighting for a separate. They want to join Pakistan, or else they want to be a separate nation. To my dear friends, and there were certain explanations on that. Later on, you can see that the government of India has removed that special provisions for the state and they have turned that into UTs, Union Territory, saying that because of these special provisions, my dear friends, you can see a lot of disturbance happening. And they say that the only method to control the disturbance was to remove these special provisions. So here we are going to talk about certain explanations which are a part of the social phenomena or even, my dear friends. So a theory is built based on the data which we are going to get in, my dear friends. For example, tribal people make choices about traditional and modern health practices to improve their quality of life. Tribal people even now prefer to go for the traditional healing methods rather than the modern health practices, my dear friends, who are there in the remote areas or in the tribal areas. Whereas the tribal people who came out of the tribal communities, they may also visit modern health practices, but at the same time, they may also indulge in traditional health practices too. So we call this as grounded theory. And the next one is case studies, my dear friends. Case study is nothing but a complete study, an in-depth study about a group of people, an individual, a society, an institution, or a social phenomena. It is a complete in-depth study. We call it as a holistic study also, my dear friends. So these are the five. These are the five methods or five qualitative methods, my dear friends. Then we have three quantitative research design perspectives, my dear friends. The first one is research design. If you want to know the cause and effect relation between the variables, at the time we go for explanatory research design. Then the next one is descriptive research design. In the descriptive research design, we are going to get the answers like what happened, where it happened, how it happened. If you're going to get the answers for this kind of questions, then we call it as descriptive research design. And the last one is experimental design. In this, we are going to put the variables for experimentation to study or to establish a cause and effect relationship between two or more variables. Variables can be classified into two types, my dear friends: independent variables and dependent variables. Dependent variables will be influenced by the independent variables. For example, think as a student, you are dependent on your parents for your educational purpose because your parents pay the fees, college fees, they pay the examination fees, they provide funding or money for purchasing the books, and so on. So your parents are independent and you are the dependent variables. So in order to study the cause and effect relation between these two variables, independent and dependent variables, my dear friends, we may put them under experimentation. There are plenty of experiments being done across the world to establish the cause and effect relationship. I'll give one example. The main duty of the prisons is not to punish the criminals or the prisoners. Their main intention is to transform them. So, in a Tihar jail, the first female IPS officer, Kiran Bedi, has introduced this open prisons, my dear friends. At the time, do you know what she has done? If any prisoner is going to have good conduct or good